The gavel echoed in the quiet courtroom, signaling the end of a trial that had gripped the nation. Sir Cedric sat at the defense table, his eyes clouded with disbelief. The verdict was clear, but the truth remained elusive. His mind raced. How could they have gotten it wrong, he thought, his knuckles turning white as he clenched his fists. The prosecution had painted a clear picture, but Sir Cedric knew something no one else did. In the dead of night, his phone rang, the sound cutting through the silence. A voice, familiar yet distant, broke the stillness. "We need to meet. It's urgent." The line went dead before he could respond. His heart pounded in his chest. What was happening? What did they know? Sir Cedric stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor as he hastily gathered his things. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Sir Cedric's mind raced as he walked towards the diner. His heart pounded, adrenaline surging through his veins. What was the message? Who had called? As he entered the dimly lit space, the warm scent of coffee and old leather hit him. He scanned the room, his eyes narrowing as he saw her sitting alone at the far booth. The comforter. Her calm demeanor did little to quell the storm brewing inside him. She smiled gently, but Sir Cedric knew better. She was hiding something. She always had been. "You wanted to meet," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "What is it?" Her eyes flickered with a momentary hesitation before she responded, her voice smooth as always. "You need to know the truth." Sir Cedric's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a conversation. This was a warning. The comforter's calm presence filled the room, yet Sir Cedric couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Her smile, warm as ever, did little to quell the turmoil churning within him. "What's going on, really?" he asked, leaning in closer. She looked up at him, eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty before she regained composure. "You need to trust me," she replied softly, her voice steady, but her hands trembling slightly. Sir Cedric knew her too well. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. He had witnessed her manipulations firsthand. But there was something different in her demeanor now. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the stakes had risen. She was playing a dangerous game, one that involved more than just the case at hand. The weight of her words lingered in the air between them. Sir Cedric wasn't sure if this meeting would give him answers or lead him deeper into a trap. The air in the diner felt thick with unspoken truths. Sir Cedric's gaze never left the comforter as she spoke, her every word carefully chosen. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He froze, his breath caught in his throat. The weight of those words, so casually spoken, threatened to unravel everything. "What do you mean?" he asked, the intensity of his voice betraying the fear creeping up his spine. She hesitated before answering, her eyes darting toward the window, avoiding his gaze. "You don't understand the bigger picture," she murmured. "There's more at play here than you realize." Sir Cedric leaned back in his seat, his mind spinning. What game was she playing? What was she hiding? The more she revealed, the more questions he had. His instinct screamed at him to leave, but he stayed, sensing that she held the key to the answers he desperately sought. Sir Cedric stood up abruptly, the chair scraping harshly against the floor. "I can't trust you," he said, his voice low but firm. The comforter's face fell, but she quickly masked it with a practiced smile. "You don't have to trust me," she replied. "But you need me." Her words rang in his ears like a challenge, and despite everything, he hesitated. What choice did he have? His gut told him to walk away, but something in her tone made him second guess. "You're playing with fire," he muttered, his fingers gripping the edge of the table. "I'm already burned," she said softly. Her eyes met his, the weight of her confession hanging in the air. He felt the chill of the room intensify. The comfort he once found in her presence was gone, replaced by a growing sense of dread. The game had changed, and Sir Cedric knew he was in deeper than ever before. The investigation was slowly gaining momentum, but Sir Cedric knew it wasn't enough. Every lead brought more questions than answers. He sat in his office, papers scattered across his desk, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "There has to be something we're missing," he muttered, staring at the pile of documents. Just then, the door creaked open, and in stepped the Velvet Blade, her calm presence filling the room. "Still trying to put the pieces together?" she asked, her voice smooth and collected. Sir Cedric looked up, his eyes narrowed. "You could help," he said, not bothering to hide his suspicion. The Velvet Blade smiled softly. "I don't have all the answers, but I can guide you through this." He didn't trust her, but he was running out of options. "Tell me everything you know," he said, leaning forward, eyes locked onto her, his voice demanding. The game was changing, and he needed her more than ever. The Velvet Blade leaned against the doorframe, her eyes never leaving Sir Cedric as she spoke. "You think you've got it all figured out," she said softly. "But the truth isn't something you can just find in a file." Sir Cedric's eyes flickered with frustration. "I don't have time for riddles, I need answers," he snapped. She smiled, her expression unchanging. "If you want answers, you need to understand the bigger picture. You're not just chasing the truth, you're chasing ghosts." Sir Cedric rose to his feet, anger flashing in his eyes. "Ghosts don't lead to justice," he retorted. She stood up straight, her presence commanding. "Then you'll never understand the cost of justice." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Sir Cedric's grip tightened on the edge of his desk, and for the first time he questioned whether he was in over his head. Later that evening, Sir Cedric met with the reluctant Firestarter at a local cafe, hoping to get some insight into the case from a different perspective. The teenager had a sharp mind and a keen sense for details others missed. As soon as she walked in, Sir Cedric noticed the tension in her movements. "I've been looking into it," she said, dropping a folder onto the table. "I think I know who's behind this." Sir Cedric raised an eyebrow. "You've been digging around?" he asked. The Firestarter, 16, female, Hispanic, short black hair, wearing a hoodie and jeans, nodded, her expression serious. "I don't trust the people you're working with," she replied. "There's more going on than you realize." Sir Cedric flipped open the folder, his eyes scanning the documents. "What do you know?" he asked, his voice low. She leaned in, whispering, "There's someone in the organization who's been working both sides." Sir Cedric froze. This was bigger than he thought. The next morning, Sir Cedric and the steady anchor met at a secluded park, away from prying eyes. The steady anchor was a reliable ally, always grounded and steadfast, but today, his usually calm demeanor was strained. "I need you to trust me," the steady anchor said, looking over his shoulder before speaking. "There's more to this case than we're being told." Sir Cedric was taken aback. "What are you saying?" The steady anchor, mid-30s, black male, broad build, wearing a simple jacket, looked around nervously before leaning in closer. "I've been in this business long enough to know when something doesn't add up. There's a reason why you're being kept in the dark." Sir Cedric's mind raced. "Who's keeping us in the dark?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The steady anchor hesitated before speaking again, his words heavy with the weight of truth. "Someone on the inside is feeding information to the other side." Back at his office, Sir Cedric reviewed the new information, trying to piece together what the steady anchor had told him. The reality of the situation began to sink in. His mind wandered back to the Velvet Blade's cryptic warning. "You'll never understand the cost of justice," she had said. Was this the price he had to pay for uncovering the truth? His phone rang, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was the reluctant Firestarter. "I found something," she said urgently. "You need to see this." Sir Cedric's heart skipped a beat. He grabbed his coat and rushed out of the office, knowing that this would be the lead he had been waiting for. As he stepped outside, the weight of everything that had happened so far pressed down on him. The case was no longer just about finding the missing person, it was about exposing the truth, no matter the cost. Sir Cedric sat in his car, staring at the nondescript building ahead. The tip he'd received earlier led him here, but something felt off. The Firestarter had been right. There was more going on than he had imagined. He had seen the file, but it didn't tell him everything. A shadow moved across the window, catching his attention. He glanced to his right to find the velvet blade standing outside, watching him from across the street. He had a moment of hesitation before he opened the door and stepped out. "What are you doing here?" Sir Cedric demanded, his voice low but sharp. The velvet blade smiled, that same unsettling calm on her face. "I'm helping you," she said. "This place, it's the key." Sir Cedric's pulse quickened. He didn't trust her. But he couldn't ignore the fact that she had been right so far. "Then let's get to it," he replied, his mind spinning with new possibilities. The velvet blade led Sir Cedric inside the building, a dusty old warehouse. The air smelled of decay, and the walls were lined with abandoned crates and boxes. "What is this place?" Sir Cedric asked, his voice barely a whisper. The velvet blade didn't answer immediately. She walked to the far corner, where a set of old documents lay scattered. "This is where the pieces come together," she said, picking up a file and handing it to him. He scanned the contents quickly, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "This was buried," he muttered, his thoughts racing. "How did you get this?" The velvet blade only smiled, the same cryptic expression on her face. "There are ways," she replied. Sir Cedric stared at the documents, the weight of the information settling in. The truth was more complicated than he had imagined, and it would cost him more than he was willing to pay. Sir Cedric stood up abruptly, the file still clutched in his hand. "This doesn't make sense," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. The velvet blade, who had been standing in silence, looked at him with an unreadable expression. "It's the truth," she replied, her voice calm. Sir Cedric's mind raced. This information was damning, implicating people he never thought he'd be involved with. "I need to think," he muttered, pacing the length of the warehouse. The velvet blade stepped closer. "You can't think this through alone. The clock is ticking." He turned sharply, meeting her gaze. "I'm not sure I can trust you," he said. "But you're right," he added after a moment. "We're running out of time." The velvet blade smiled faintly, as though the tension in the air didn't faze her. "Then let's move forward," she said simply, her voice laced with the quiet assurance of someone who knew what would come next. The next day, Sir Cedric met with the steady anchor in a secluded park. The steady anchor had been a reliable source of support, but today there was a visible tension in his posture. "I've been hearing things," the steady anchor said, his voice low. Sir Cedric raised an eyebrow. "What things?" The steady anchor glanced around, ensuring no one was listening. "The velvet blade has ties to people you shouldn't be involved with," he said, his words heavy with warning. Sir Cedric felt a chill run through him. "Are you saying she's manipulating me?" The steady anchor didn't answer immediately. He hesitated, his eyes scanning the area. "I don't know. But be careful, Cedric. There are layers to this that you haven't seen yet." Sir Cedric's mind raced. The truth he had uncovered was only a fraction of the whole story. He had to be cautious. The stakes were higher than ever. That evening, Sir Cedric sat alone in his office, the weight of the revelations from the last few days settling heavily on his shoulders. He had learned more than he was ready for, and yet he knew he had to press on. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was the reluctant fire starter. "I found something," she said urgently. Sir Cedric stood up, his pulse quickening. "What is it?" he asked. "I think I know who's behind it all," she replied. Her voice was shaky, but there was an edge of excitement in it. Sir Cedric grabbed his coat and rushed out of the office. As he stepped into the night, he felt the weight of the case more than ever. He was no longer just looking for answers. He was trying to stop something far more dangerous than he had imagined. The tension in the room was palpable as Sir Cedric sat across from the comforter, the truth finally starting to unfold. The air between them crackled with the weight of unspoken words. "You knew about all of this, didn't you?" Sir Cedric asked, his voice sharp. The comforter looked at him, her calm demeanor unshaken, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of guilt. "I knew some of it," she replied, her voice steady but tinged with regret. "I never thought it would get this far." Sir Cedric leaned in, the anger in his voice rising. "How could you have let it go on?" People are suffering because of this. The comforter sighed, her eyes downcast. I did what I thought was best at the time, she said softly. But I was wrong. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Sir Cedric stood up abruptly, pacing the room, his thoughts racing. Now we have to fix this, he muttered, no matter the cost. The air in the room grew thicker, as Sir Cedric absorbed the truth. The comforter's confession was both a relief and a burden. So who's behind it? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The comforter hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. It's bigger than you realize, she replied, her eyes darting toward the window. There are people in power who have been pulling the strings, controlling everything from the shadows. Sir Cedric's mind spun as he tried to process the magnitude of what she was saying. Who? He asked again, his voice firm. The comforter met his gaze. Her eyes darkened with regret. The velvet blade, she whispered. Sir Cedric froze. The realization hit him like a physical blow. All this time, the person he thought was on his side was the one orchestrating the chaos. Sir Cedric's mind was racing. The revelation was too much to process, but he knew one thing for certain. Everything had changed. He turned back toward the comforter, his voice steady but filled with anger. How long have you known about this? The comforter met his gaze, her expression softening with sadness. I found out too late, she admitted. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late to stop it. Sir Cedric's fists clenched, his frustration boiling over. And now we're stuck cleaning up your mess, he spat. The comforter stood up, moving toward him. I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. I'm doing everything I can to make it right. Sir Cedric shook his head. We don't have time for excuses. We need to act now. The comforter's eyes hardened. Then we're in this together, she said. But you need to trust me. Sir Cedric's trust in the comforter was shattered, but he knew he couldn't do this alone. They were at a crossroads, and the stakes had never been higher. We need to get to the velvet blade before it's too late, he said, his voice determined. The comforter nodded, her face hardening. I know a way, she said, her tone now serious. But it's risky. The velvet blade won't make it easy. Sir Cedric didn't hesitate. I'm not backing down, he said firmly. The comforter looked at him, her gaze lingering for a moment. Then we go in full force, she said. The room fell silent for a moment, as they both understood the weight of what they were about to do. There was no turning back. Let's make this right, Sir Cedric muttered, his resolve stronger than ever. Sir Cedric and the comforter stood at the entrance to the Velvet Blade's compound, their minds set on one thing, bringing the truth to light. This is it, Sir Cedric said, his voice grim. The comforter nodded, her eyes scanning the area. Stay close, she whispered. The tension between them was palpable, but there was no turning back now. As they moved through the compound's gates, Sir Cedric felt the weight of every decision, every betrayal. If we fail, it's over for both of us, he said quietly. The comforter's gaze met his, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and resolve. Then we don't fail, she replied. Together, they pressed forward, ready to face the consequences of the twisted path they had walked. The tension was unbearable as Sir Cedric and the comforter stood in the heart of the Velvet Blade's lair. The dark, imposing building loomed before them like a fortress. This is it, Sir Cedric said, his voice a mixture of determination and fear. If we're going to end this, it has to be now. The comforter nodded, her eyes scanning the surroundings with caution. I've got your back, she whispered. But we need to be careful. The Velvet Blade knows we're coming. Sir Cedric clenched his fists. I'm not afraid of her, not anymore. The door to the compound creaked open, and the Velvet Blade appeared, standing in the threshold. You shouldn't have come, she said, her voice cold and calm. This is where it ends. Sir Cedric stepped forward, his expression hardening. No, this is where it begins. The final confrontation was inevitable. The Velvet Blade stepped into the dimly lit hallway, her eyes never leaving Sir Cedric and the comforter. You think you can stop me? She said, her voice filled with disdain. You're nothing but pawns in a game you can't comprehend. Sir Cedric's fists tightened. I understand enough, he said, his voice firm. You've manipulated everything, pulling the strings from the shadows, but it ends tonight. The velvet blade smirked. You think I'm afraid of you? She asked. You're too late. This has already been decided. The comforter stepped forward, her expression resolute. We'll see about that, she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. Sir Cedric took a step toward the velvet blade. This ends now, he declared, his words heavy with finality. The velvet blade's smile faded. As she realized the fight was not just for control, it was for survival. The room erupted into chaos as the velvet blade lunged forward, her movements quick and precise. Sir Cedric barely dodged, his heart pounding in his chest. You should have stayed out of this, she sneered. Sir Cedric retaliated, his fists striking with power, but the velvet blade's agility matched his every move. You're nothing, she hissed, deflecting his attacks. The comforter moved in to help, but the velvet blade spun around, blocking her advance with a swift kick. This is my domain, the velvet blade said, her voice low and threatening. Sir Cedric wasn't about to back down. He pushed forward with everything he had. You've had control for too long, he said, his voice fierce. This ends tonight. With a final powerful blow, Sir Cedric managed to land a punch to the velvet blade's chest, knocking her back. As the fight continued, the velvet blade staggered back, her breath heavy. You don't understand, she gasped. I've done what needed to be done. I've controlled everything to ensure order. Sir Cedric, bloodied but determined, stepped forward. Order? You've created a system of lies and betrayal, he said. The comforter's voice was calm but firm. You've built your empire on manipulation and fear, but we're taking it down. The velvet blade's eyes narrowed, a hint of panic flashing behind her calm facade. You can't stop what's already in motion, she hissed. I'm untouchable. Sir Cedric shook his head. Not anymore, he said, stepping toward her. With a final surge of strength, he lunged forward, knocking her to the ground. The fight was over. But the consequences were just beginning. The silence after the battle was deafening. Sir Cedric stood over the velvet blade, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. It's over, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The comforter approached, her expression softening. We did it, she said quietly. Sir Cedric didn't respond at first, his thoughts elsewhere. He had won, but the cost had been high. What now? The comforter asked, sensing his hesitation. Sir Cedric looked at her, his face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. We rebuild, he said, his voice filled with conviction. But we can never forget what we've lost. As they turned to leave, Sir Cedric's mind wandered back to everything that had happened. They had defeated the Velvet Blade, but the road to justice was far from over. The fight for truth had just begun. The quiet after the storm felt surreal. Sir Cedric sat alone in his office, staring at the documents spread out before him. The Velvet Blade was defeated, but the weight of everything they had uncovered was crushing. We did it, he muttered under his breath, but there was no satisfaction in his voice. The comforter's words echoed in his mind. Justice comes at a price. He had won the battle, but the cost of everything they had lost weighed on him. He ran a hand through his hair, looking up at the empty room. How do we move forward? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. The door creaked open, and the comforter entered, her expression soft but resolute. You don't have to do this alone, she said quietly. Sir Cedric stood, his eyes meeting hers. I know, he said. But that doesn't make it any easier. The investigation may have ended, but the aftermath was just beginning. Sir Cedric and the comforter met in a small cafe, their conversation hushed and deliberate. Do you think we've truly uncovered everything? Sir Cedric asked, his gaze sharp. The comforter's eyes softened, the weight of the question settling between them. No, she replied quietly. There are more layers to this, more people involved. Sir Cedric stared at her, disbelief flickering in his eyes. Are you telling me there's still more to this? After everything? The comforter nodded. The velvet blade was just one part. There are others, hidden deeper in the system. You haven't seen the full picture yet. Sir Cedric leaned back in his chair, the full weight of her words sinking in. Then it's not over, he muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. Not by a long shot. Sir Cedric stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline. We've exposed the truth, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface, he said, his voice distant. The comforter joined him by the window, her gaze following his. The truth has a way of hiding, she said softly. But it always finds its way out. Eventually. Sir Cedric sighed, his thoughts heavy. And when it does, there will be consequences. Real consequences. The comforter nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. There always are, she replied. But sometimes, the cost is worth it. Sir Cedric turned to face her, a rare moment of vulnerability in his eyes. I don't know if I can keep going like this, he admitted. The price is too high. The comforter met his gaze, her expression unwavering. You don't have to carry it alone, she said, her voice filled with quiet reassurance. The next day, Sir Cedric and the comforter met with their allies, those few remaining who hadn't been corrupted by the system. They sat around a table, the mood heavy with unspoken words. What now? One of the allies asked, their voice anxious. Sir Cedric looked around the table, his face stern. We rebuild, he said, his voice firm. We make sure this never happens again. The comforter nodded in agreement. But it won't be easy. There are people out there still trying to cover their tracks. Sir Cedric met her gaze, his resolve hardening. We expose them, one by one. The room was silent for a moment, as everyone took in the gravity of his words. This isn't over, Sir Cedric added, his voice low but resolute. It's only just begun. Later that evening, Sir Cedric stood alone in his office, the city lights below him flickering like distant stars. His phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from the fire starter. I found something new. You need to see it. Sir Cedric's heart skipped a beat. Just when he thought the investigation was over, there was another twist waiting for him. He grabbed his coat and left the office, his mind racing. This isn't over, he muttered to himself. Not by a long shot. The weight of everything they had uncovered, and everything still hidden, pressed heavily on his shoulders. As he stepped into the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that the true battle was just beginning. The city was still, the night air thick with anticipation. Sir Cedric stood before the courtroom, the weight of the years of investigation pressing down on him. His hand gripped the papers in front of him, the truth finally in his grasp. It's all been a lie, he said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the revelation. Every piece of this system has been corrupted from the start, controlled by those in power. The room was silent, every eye on him. But no more, he continued, his gaze unwavering. We've uncovered the truth, and now, it's time for justice. He paused for a moment, looking around the room, the weight of his words sinking in. This isn't just about one person or one case. It's about everything, and we're taking it all down. The moment had arrived. The final act of this long journey had begun, and there was no turning back. As the trial continued, the air grew thick with the tension of the looming revelations. Sir Cedric sat, his mind racing as the prosecution laid out the final pieces of the puzzle. It all points to one person, the prosecutor said, his voice firm. Sir Cedric's heart pounded. He knew what was coming. The truth, the person behind everything they had fought for, it was someone he never expected. It's the Velvet Blade, the prosecutor declared, the name echoing through the courtroom. Sir Cedric felt a chill run through him. How had he missed it? The Velvet Blade had been the shadow that loomed over everything. As the realization hit, Sir Cedric looked across the room, his eyes locking with the comforters. They had known this day would come, but that didn't make it any easier. The battle for justice had reached its final chapter. The Velvet Blade sat in the defendant's seat, her expression calm, as if the world was still under her control. Sir Cedric approached the stand, the weight of everything he had uncovered pressing down on him. You thought you could control everything, he said, his voice cold. You thought you were untouchable. But in the end, it all falls apart. The velvet blade's lips curled into a slight smile, though there was no warmth in it. You're too late, she said softly. The pieces are already in motion. The truth won't change anything. Sir Cedric's jaw tightened. We'll see about that, he replied, his voice filled with resolve. The battle was no longer about what she had done. It was about making sure she couldn't do it again. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about stopping the cycle. The verdict was in. The velvet blade had been found guilty, but Sir Cedric couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Is it really over? He asked, his voice filled with doubt. The comforter stood beside him, her face soft but resolute. It's over for her, she said. But the system still stands. It's up to us to make sure this never happens again. Sir Cedric nodded, his eyes scanning the courtroom. The fight for justice had been long and hard, but it was only the beginning. We'll keep fighting, he said quietly. Not just for the truth, but for the future. The weight of responsibility hung heavy on his shoulders, but he knew he couldn't stop now. The real work was just beginning. As the days passed, Sir Cedric and the comforter stood on the rooftop of the courthouse, looking out over the city. It's over, Sir Cedric said, his voice filled with a quiet finality. For now, the comforter replied. But we know better. There's always more to uncover. Sir Cedric turned to face her, his expression serious. What now? He asked. The comforter smiled faintly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Now we move forward. We rebuild. We make sure no one else has to go through what we did. Sir Cedric nodded, the weight of the past still heavy on his shoulders, but with a sense of purpose for the future. And we never forget, he said softly. The wind blew gently as they stood together, watching the city, knowing their fight wasn't over yet. But this time they were ready,